women just have much more empathy than men. Like, I swear, a lot of men lack the empathy gene. Like, a lot of them are borderline psychopaths. Like, why don't men care about their children? It's because they don't have empathy.
And that truth bomb about how terrible men are was brought to you by a YouTuber who goes by Manifestelle. Her proof of this statement? The actions of a few celebrities. Great. Thanks for attacking men in general because of what a few celebrities are doing. Anyway, as I said, this is Manifestelle, or Elle Ray, which sounds like a fake name, but I guess we can just call her Elle. Elle is a part of a group of women who decided to become YouTubers after they binged gold digger content clips from Shira 7 on TikTok, and it seems like their singular goal is to make their female viewers as unlikable as possible. As if male and female relationships already weren't bad enough, we have creators like Manifestelle making things worse by spreading narcissistic ideology like this.
Just exist. Because as a woman, you have value just by existing. And a lot of people don't want you to know that. Simply existing with a man, you're already doing him a favor because you bring so much to the table just by existing with him, just by allowing him 24/7 access to you.
Nah, no you don't. The only things that have value just by existing are children and pets. So unless you want to be treated like a child or a pet, you better get to work. Getting along with someone and enjoying their company is great. That's the fun part of the relationship, but also there's a lot of work to be done to create the space to have fun, and what guy wants to be with a woman who just sits there and exists? What woman would want to put up with a man who just exists in a relationship? Well, I can think of someone who wouldn't.
Like, honestly, the holidays are even worse for women who bear this responsibility of making sure that everything is in place and everyone else is unwinding. Like, a lot of the women are running themselves ragged while the men just exist.
Oh, so now it's suddenly a problem for someone to not contribute actual labor when it means that you have to do the work. What a convenient set of beliefs. It's almost the same kind of one-sided beliefs a person who lacks the empathy gene would have. So on the female side of the internet, you have ideas like that poisoning women. Women who are often fresh out of a pathological relationship when they find Manifestelle, and she basically recommends that they fix their relationship problems by doing the exact bad things that were done to them. And if that wasn't bad enough, she fills their head with ideas that are very far removed from reality.
Guy friends almost always end up liking you.
Okay, technically that part was true. Anyway, here's the delusional part.
And for the longest time that you've been friends with them, they have liked you for all that time. So you just allowed him to date you for years on end, getting all the benefits of a relationship with you, draining you, using you in the games of men, using you as a status symbol, all under the guise of friendship.
Wait, they get all the benefits? Are you sure? Because I can think of a physical activity that is a benefit of a relationship that guys don't get when they're in the friend zone.
Women are trophies in the games of men. So female presence around a man confers a lot of status on him. All of a sudden, he's a winner. I've experienced and learned from other women how guy friends would want to go out with you as friends, but they would make other people think that you're together. And after that, he still has the audacity to Venmo request you.
You're kidding, right? As a guy, if you pretend to go out with a chick when you're actually in the friend zone, all of your male friends are going to think you're a complete loser when they find out. This isn't high school, Elle. I mean, you're old enough to be out of college. You're a fully grown adult, and who in their mid-20s thinks a guy in the friend zone is a winner? She's so delusional about this that she brings up a comment about how a male chat mod of a female streamer is using that streamer for clout, as if anyone outside of Reddit thinks that a Pokimane simp is cool. And the craziest thing is that she spends this whole video pretending that women don't knowingly string guys along in the friend zone because of the benefits that they get.
All the girlies who say, well, my guy friend is okay because he pays for me. So when you go out, he pays for you, but he's not dating you. They're accessing you in a romantic way, in a romantic setting, without being your actual mate.
Yeah, it sounds like she's receiving the benefit of a relationship here, because certainly I don't pay for all my friends' meals. We either trade off or we split the bill. Now, despite the fact that Manifestelle will throw slight jabs at the Manosphere, I really don't see much of a difference between her content and channels like Fresh and Fit. That's kind of the problem with all this stuff. I think mainstream figures in both the Manosphere and the She-Ra 7 cinematic universe promote ideology that is incredibly toxic to the dating pool. The gold digger stuff is just the version of it that appeals to women. However, despite Elle taking slight jabs at channels like Fresh and Fit, she repeats the same ideology.
You are the prize, not him. You are the source, not him.
Gee, where have I heard that before?
I always find it interesting how like girls kind of like look at it like I'm the prize. Not really, I don't think so.
The reason why the man is the prize is because the man needs to be superior to the woman for the woman to be interested in him.
That's a fact.
Personally, I fail to see strong relationships where each partner doesn't think of the other as the prize, but maybe that's just my own life experiences. Next, we have the abundance mindset.
I want guys to have an abundance mindset, because when you have an abundance mindset, you're able to better detect a girl that is worthy of a relationship.
You need to get more into your abundance mindset, because as a woman, everyone wants to access you. Like, literally everyone wants to access you.
I mean, I've even heard Manifestelle call men hypergamous.
Because as it turns out, women usually date within or below their league, while men usually date out of their league.
What? If you watch the video, her evidence of this is a random street interview where men say they would rather date a higher value woman, and women say they would rather date a lower value man. First of all, just because a man wants a more valuable woman doesn't mean he can get her. Second, hypergamy is not specifically defined, so we have no idea what it means. Does higher value mean more physically attractive, more money, more education, more social skills, a better network? That's kind of the problem with this and the hypergamy studies that I was able to find. Basically, none of them considered important value indicators like physical attractiveness or the person's network and how those mix with things like making more money. Now, surely Elle wouldn't repeat this same talking point about how hypergamous men are in a different video about princess treatment and be dumb enough to show a graph that displays married men making double what married women make and follow that by saying that women would rather be single than marry a guy who makes less than $40K a year, which is more than the average woman made in that study. That sounds kind of hypergamous. I mean, even the unmarried men are making more than the married women, and this is men marrying up? The only metric she wins on is education, but this probably doesn't factor in trade schools or apprenticeships, and more importantly, being a college graduate doesn't mean you're smart or have a lot of money. In fact, what I see here is the unmarried men who make more than women are probably in a lot less debt. But if you think that her thoughts on hypergamy was the worst Manosphere copycat take, then you haven't heard this one.
Men baby trap women all the time, especially women who have high potential or are already high achieving, high earning women. Men love to baby trap these women all the time. A lot of bad men will baby trap you, have children with you, then disengage, leave, and then use the child to manipulate you and have constant, continuous access to you through the child. A lot of bad men use children to perpetually abuse their ex-partners. And a lot of the times, the court systems help them do it. The courts help these bad men control their exes' lives.
Great, she's red-pilled on family court. But ultimately, the decision to have a child or not is on the woman, so this isn't trapping. Even if you were stupid and had unprotected sex with a person that you aren't married to, women can still choose whether or not to take that baby to term, whether a man consents to it or not. The man can't do that, which is why it's called trapping, though I don't see why everyone feels the need to blame the opposite sex. If you have unprotected sex with a person who you aren't in a committed relationship with, then both of you are stupid. Stop creating messed up situations for children and then blaming each other for it because you wanted to feel slightly better in bed. And if you had the kid voluntarily in a marriage but it failed, then that's not baby trapping, that's people picking the wrong partners. So I don't think Elle really understands the terms that she's using. But I will say that it literally looks like this chick just watched a bunch of Manosphere content, flipped around some of the words, and sold it to women. I mean, this is straight up copycat material.
When you do the exact same work as another woman, you are the exact same as that woman. When you sleep with a man, have relations with a man, it doesn't matter if he's your husband, your boyfriend, your friends with benefits, you're performing the exact same act as an S worker. You are an S worker too.
Did she just say that all women are prostitutes? This is satire, right? But just in case you had any doubt about this being the female version of the Manosphere, then look, she even sells a crappy overpriced course on how to be a YouTuber, where she brags about how much money she makes, and if you pay her $450, which is a sale, guys, so you're getting a deal here, it's totally not always on sale, but if you pay her $450, she'll even show you how much money she makes. Except, we already know how much money you make. You said here it's over $100,000. I feel like I just saved people money on part 5. Speaking of each section, I don't know what any of this stuff means on part 4. Everything in part 3 can be Googled in like 5 seconds, as well as most of part 2. Or, alternatively, you can learn how to take blurry photos from Elle with tons of visual noise so your eye has no idea what to focus on, which is terrible for social media marketing. Really, the only advice here that would be worth any money is script writing and content strategy, but you can learn that stuff for way less than what she's charging. Both of these topics are talked about in this masterclass from the writers of Stranger Things, and it's like $10 to get access to it. Also, watch this video from the South Park creators and then buy this book by John Truby. There, I just saved you $400. Speaking of people like Shira7, the whole foundation of this gold digger spoiled girly movement is what they call princess treatment. And if you don't know what that means, let's have Elle define it.
A good man will do his best to make it easy for you. A good man allows you to turn off the chaos in your brain in his presence. Like, the greenest green flag is when you can stop thinking about things. Like, you can just turn your brain off, put yourself in princess passenger mode in his presence. Because he's doing all the thinking, he's doing all the planning, he's doing all these things.
Yeah, that sounds a lot like infantilization. It sounds like you want to be treated like a child who doesn't have to do anything. Well, a spoiled child who mommy and daddy buy a bunch of useless nonsense for.
Princess treatment is apparently the new status symbol. Purchasing your own luxury items or luxury experiences is no longer the most highest aspirational marker of high status. It is now getting a man to get you those things. The luxury items, the luxury experiences.
Great, yet another female influencer telling women that men ain't shit unless they waste money on an ugly-ass Louis Vuitton purse or go on vacation 10 times a year. Be real, spoiled girlies. The only reason that you like this design is because they won't let you have this purse unless you're rich. Otherwise, it's ugly or unimpressive. Literally the biggest waste of money ever. It's almost as dumb as Californians paying for a $75,000 house on a $1.2 million plot of land. But getting back to the infantilization part and the part where Manifestelle is yet again arguing to be treated like a child or a pet, it's really ironic because I've watched her say this.
Men are not children. Stop infantilizing men.
So it's wrong for women to infantilize men, but it's ideal if men treat women like they're children? How about both partners behave like adults? Now, I do think it's fine to let the woman that you're with sit back and relax as you handle everything. I mean, why wouldn't you want to treat a significant other well? But if she expects you to do that 24/7 while she's spaced out all the time just existing, it gets annoying. Particularly if she combos that with a messed up and unappreciative statement like, "This is the bare minimum you can do for me because just by existing around me, you're draining my resources."
Provider men are the bare minimum, okay? So it is a spoiled girly support group. Provider men are the bare minimum. And in the spoiled girly support group, provider men are not status symbols, okay? Like, they're the only men that exist.
By provider man, she means the guy who pays for everything, does all the work, and wastes money on luxury items that are valued by the brand name and not by the design or the quality of the materials. So, what a nice way to devalue a man who works hard while framing it as a compliment. Hey, you know all that hard work that you did to become rich and successful? That's like D+ bare minimum effort. It's just a passing grade. I mean, for how much she talks about women being treated poorly, she sure has a way of speaking down to men, even the men she labels as good. But great news, guys. I think you'll enjoy the advice from this next clip.
If he offers you a coffee date or a walking date, he wants to take you on a first date to walk you like a dog. A lot of us have been offered coffee dates or walking dates, but it is on us to reject them, okay?
Funny how she mentioned the dog thing as a demeaning standard when she often states that she wants to be treated like a pet. But thanks, Manifestelle. You just gave us a cheat code to make sure that we never end up in a relationship with a woman like you. Take her out for coffee or a trip to the park on the first date. Personally, I think that spending money on a woman isn't a problem, but leading with money will very likely earn you a stuck-up narcissist. Now, this is not to say that Elle always makes bad arguments. Like I've stated with other creators that I've made videos on, there's a reason why people agree with her and follow her content. It's because there's truth in some of what she says, and it seems like a primary concern from her viewers is that in the past, they've dated losers.
And a lot of women think that by being with a man when he's down and out, when he's financially unstable, by supporting him, paying his bills, buying him a car, paying for rent, while he sits home and plays video games, you think that you're helping him out. But this man is not in his purpose.
Yeah, I agree. Women shouldn't date men who don't have jobs or men who are still making minimum wage in their late 20s. There are so many jobs out there that are in demand and pay well, especially in the trades. If a guy is just wasting his life away by playing Fortnite for 12 hours a day, then women shouldn't date him, and certainly they shouldn't be paying his bills. The second topic I think people like Manifestelle have a strong point on is when they talk about traditional marriages and about how much of a vulnerable place that type of relationship can put women in if they choose incorrectly.
For 24 years, I lived in $1 million homes. I vacationed all over the world. I spent my summers in Hawaii. I could buy myself $500 jeans, diamond tennis bracelets. We had boats and RVs and whatever I wanted. And it never bothered me once that my financial security was dependent on that man being in love with me. I never realized that him liking me or not liking me or finding me sexy or attractive or interesting determined whether or not my children could eat.
Personally, I think traditional marriages are still better than modern ones, but that doesn't mean there aren't issues. I do think women should be learning how to vet for abusive men and maybe invest time into building a marketable skill that makes you enough to survive just in case, or make sure that you have supportive family members that you can fall back on just in case. Good relationships will always have hedges against abusers or fallouts. And it's important that this is brought up because if you're in a position where your partner is trying to put you in a place where they have enormous power over you and they fight for that, then they are most likely going to be abusive or at the very least will be tempted to leverage that power against you. But also understand that this problem is compounded by other things like asshole elites buying up entire neighborhoods so they can artificially increase the price of housing, whether that's to selfishly make more money or purposefully make people more mentally ill by making it too expensive for people to be able to afford to leave abusive relationships. Mentally ill people are very easy to manipulate and control, especially through fear-mongering, and don't think assholes out there wouldn't do this. There's a whole book about it called The Dictator's Handbook that talks about how politicians do things like purposefully design roads to be inefficient so that people don't have time to protest. You'd be surprised at how much of people's free time you can steal with inefficient traffic lights, inefficient infrastructure, or endless construction. So understand that this problem is a little bit more complicated than one group on the internet pointing the finger at women and one group on the internet pointing the finger at men. And it would be nice if we could stop doing that, so instead we could focus on asshole elites who are pathologizing society so they can get a few more zeros next to their names or stay in power.
Getting into this whole comparative suffering thing, whether it's black, Asian, white, Chinese, man, woman, all this other stuff, it is most often pointless and counterproductive. You spend more time discussing who suffers more and who suffers less, and less time acknowledging the other person's suffering.
Suffering Olympics.
You're in competition. There's literally no opportunity here for you guys to work together because you're too busy being like, I have it worse. And in order for you to be able to say that you have it worse, you have to discredit the other side. How are you ever going to build?
Speaking of politics and an extreme lack of self-awareness, Manifestelle decided to make a video about the 2024 election.
You may have noticed, I don't really talk about politics. There's other people better equipped to talk about that, and it's not me, okay? If you are expecting me to, number one, tell you my political ideology, and number two, to push that certain political ideology on you, no, this is not the place for it.
Aw, this is so sweet. She thinks she doesn't push any of her political ideology in her videos.
And this is all because I believe that the patriarchal structures we are under have once again tricked us into being pygmies for them.
What's funny is that this very ideologically charged statement is the next thing she says. And I'm supposed to believe that she scripts these videos when she makes optics mistakes like that? I mean, you would have to not watch her content to be unable to figure out where she is on the political spectrum, especially when she throws out stuff like this in most videos.
On top of us living in what some people would call late-stage capitalism, which, hot take, is literally just capitalism.
Gee, personally, I'm only aware of one group on the internet that uses that term, late-stage capitalism. Like, it's a very specific group of people.
It's the reason why people love to emphasize how much they worked hard instead of acknowledging the privileges that gave them a leg up.
Now she's going on about privilege. Are you still having trouble figuring out where Elle falls on the political spectrum? What if I told you that she's quoted Naomi Wolf in a few videos, uses the term misogyny a lot, and says stuff like natural society was matriarchal until men took society from women and created the patriarchy?
Why does the patriarchy need to be legitimized through these complicated social constructs? It's almost like it's unnatural. Okay, and we talked about it in our God is a Woman class. It is such a deep dive on the origins of patriarchy and how matriarchy was the default programming of a lot of our societies, and patriarchy literally was so artificial, and it's caused a lot of problems.
Would anyone have trouble figuring out that this chick is on the left? And not just on the left, I mean Elle is very on the left. Using the term late-stage capitalism should be a big red flag for that. Only bread tubers use that term.
Women are waking up to the fact that the least a man can do is pay. They taught us that it is bad to be an entitled, difficult, spoiled gold digger. You know why? It's to police us from demanding our fair shake in this capitalist patriarchal society.
Or it's because it's annoying. But the whole spoiled girly thing must be confusing because feminist types like her typically see it as demeaning to let a man be the breadwinner and be in control. I really don't understand how a person who constantly preaches feminist ideology could have these beliefs, unless her ideology is catered to whatever conveniently benefits her the most, instead of being catered to any kind of moral consistency, which is very much the move of a radicalized person. So when I say she's very on the left, I mean that she is very on the left, like woke radical leftist echo chamber, where she never listens to opposing ideas.
First of all, men are not allowed in the comments, okay? Y'all are not allowed. This is not your space. The rest of the internet is your space. This is the spoiled girly support group. Men are not allowed. I've been hearing this sentiment about how
we need to hear people out and have all these conversations with different types of people.
no, like I don't need to talk to like people that I don't want to talk to. I don't need to talk to people who argue from bad faith. I don't need to do this and that. Like, I don't need to do anything, okay?
Yeah, I can tell that you never listen to opposition because so many of the things that you say are complete nonsense. Only someone who never looks at criticism would say these things. Again, it's so hard to believe that someone is unironically saying this that it sounds like satire. This is exactly what South Park was making fun of.
If you do not like me, you are not allowed in my safe space.
And by the way, it's not just no men in the comments, it's also nobody who is not a spoiled girly is allowed to comment on my videos either.
And as a reminder, only spoiled girlies are allowed in the spoiled girly support group, and it's a support group, not debate class.
That's hilarious. It's literally the Safe Space song from South Park in its entirety, even using similar wording.
People that support me, mixed in with more people that support me and say nice things.
As I said before, this chick has no self-awareness, which I'm sure has nothing to do with her insistence on never listening to people who disagree with her. And what I mean by that is that during the politics video, she's like, I used to be a dumb woke person who would have been in those TikTok compilations of people freaking out because Trump won, but I've changed now.
This isn't my first rodeo, okay? Like, I was in the trenches, protesting, walking, chanting, making signs and posters. Like, I was mad. And honestly, I'm so thankful that I didn't have TikTok back then because I'd be in these compilations. Honestly, like, these compilations that they make on TikTok to make fun of women in pain and women who have been manipulated to be so emotionally dependent on a patriarchal structure, so much so that it sends them spiraling when things do not go their way politically. Like, these are women in pain, and it's so upsetting to see that this has been done to them. And like I said, I am so passionate about this because I was these women.
I love how she plays the victim here and says, these poor women melting down because their political candidate lost. Weren't these people also saying that their political opponent should have been assassinated and made TikToks lamenting about how the shooter missed? I have no sympathy for these people. If you don't want people clipping you, then don't post shit on the internet. They're adults and they're responsible for their own actions. Stop playing the victim card and infantilizing them.
At this point in time, I was turning into an easily triggered person. I was becoming hateful. I was looking down on people for the very same behavior I was engaging in. And every time something happened outside of my control, the wrong person got voted in, whatever, it would send me into a spiral, okay? Like, I was catastrophizing, worrying, and just having these intrusive, like, what if XYZ bad thing happened thoughts. It also makes me so sad that other women are still being turned into that, okay? It's still happening to women all over the country, especially young women. And I have done so much to heal from that.
Elle, how exactly did you change? Sure, you might not be flipping out because Trump won the election again, but you still exhibit all the same pathological behaviors that the average wokey does. What do I mean by that? Well, why don't we talk about it?
I always get accused of instigating a gender war between men and women.
Gee, I wonder why people would accuse you of this. Maybe it has something to do with you moving into man-hating ideology right after you said that.
Oh, this is so divisive. Like, why are you so bitter? Like, you're doing more harm than good.
Okay, I don't need to do that. Okay, I don't need to start a fake gender war online. You know why? Because we're already at war. Women and children are already being harmed by the male population. Violent crime has a male problem. Child SA has a male problem. Mass unalivement has a male problem. When do we start talking about our male problem?
Well, if you're going to be openly sexist, then why stop there? Why not break these problems with violent crime down by race? And if framing it like that makes you a bigot, then saying, we need to talk about the male problem is just as messed up. Now, I've watched a number of the Gold Digger videos over the past couple years, and I have never seen one of them spread radicalized man-hating ideology as often as Manifestelle does. Maybe the Wizard Liz had a bad video or two that I would say possibly counts as sexist. Possibly. Anna Bay is like a fashion YouTuber now, so she doesn't count. And Shira7 is often really funny when she talks shit about men, So actually, I don't really care about the things that she says because it's just comedy.
I've been with him 4 years and we still ain't moved out or have a ring, and currently he has no job. Then you a prisoner. You've been kidnapped by a broke man.
I mean, I don't like her morals, but she is funny. That being said, Manifestelle spreads man-hating vitriol in at least half of the videos that I watched. She straight up has mantras designed to make women hate men.
Men are inherently labor and they are inherently risk. I always tell you, men are inherently risk, men are inherently labor, men are still labor, and men are still risk.
Now, I don't think I've ever seen her explain this because she uses a bunch of insider language designed to make outsiders not understand what she's talking about, which totally is not something that radicalized cults do. I mean, she clearly has read the How to Make a Cult section of the 48 Laws of Power, as she has her spoiled girly support group that doesn't allow dissenting opinions and has the narcissistic belief that her group is better than other people. A number of cult tactics are being used here. But I think by labor, she means that men have the crazy expectation of women having to do work in their relationship, and by risk, she means that men are violent. She also says this a lot.
If you're new here, the freebird theory is our theory that men like to cage freebirds. They like pursuing women who have things going for themselves, are on the cusp of something great, are on the precipice of making a name for themselves, and these men trap these women, essentially caging the free bird. And the freer the bird, the higher the bird flies, the more satisfying the takedown.
I have no idea what this means. I've never seen this in real life. Like, I'm sure there's a person on TikTok who has a story, but this is not a common thing. Men aren't just out there thinking, this woman's about to become a CEO, I can't wait to cage her and ruin her dreams. And her examples for stuff like this are usually celebrities, so I don't think she has the strongest grasp on reality. Understand that she's describing traditional relationships here, so I also think that she thinks that traditional relationships are inherently pathological, as she very frequently calls them indentured servitude, and completely undermines the fact that men also have to work incredibly hard to make those relationships work, especially in the modern economy. But as I said, this chick has no ability to see stuff from other people's perspectives or self-reflect, so she'll say stuff like this.
It is a trend that comes up time and time again, like literally in history. It comes up time and time again, and it's the objectification to dehumanization pipeline, which usually ends up almost always in the harming, unaliving, enslaving, and colonizing of said dehumanized and objectified people.
Get it? It's ironic because she objectifies and dehumanizes men all the time.
Just by existing with a man, you have value and you are being mined for your value. And the least men can do is pay.
I want someone to make a counter for how many times she objectifies men in her videos for their money and just sees them as a wallet. And speaking of dehumanization, Elle constantly dehumanizes men to make us seem psychopathic and evil.
Men love free birds. Like, they take pleasure in you giving up something to be with them.
What kind of men are you dating? Again, this is not a common thing. The only person who would think this is common is a person who got all their relationship knowledge from TikTok.
Always see older women in their 80s and 90s saying what has kept them going for so long. They said they stayed single. Men make us miserable.
This comment piqued my interest. Are women really living longer and happier lives without men? And the answer is yes.
Yeah, this is like incel content for women. It's hard to imagine any self-respecting man dating someone who hates men so much that she would frame them in this way in so many videos. The minute he sees her saying stuff like this, he's out.
Men have not kept up with the times. They still have this entitlement towards women, and they are disrespecting women even more. They are scamming women even more. They're hurting women even more. They're unaliving women even more.
And now we're a bunch of killers? Unaliving women even more is a strange claim because murder rates have been trending downward for the past 30 years, and only spiked up a little bit during the COVID years when mainstream media was openly encouraging rioting. But now that that's over, you can see them trending down again. And the rates of female homicide follow the same trend. You would think that Elle would have looked that up before she put that statement in her video. And what I mean by that is that she's given the sentiment that men are becoming more violent in multiple videos, but apparently has never taken a few seconds to actually look that up to see if it was true. Do you not see how saying this kind of stuff is dehumanizing towards men and might make your audience feel that violence towards men is justified?
Well, here's the
maybe
thing, is
they're
that
the
I
ones.
feel like anytime that I have people on the internet that act like that, there is like, basically there's 3 words: unresolved personal trauma.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's like somebody goes on the internet and they got problems with another group of people. I'll tell you the reason why. It's because you don't have problems with men, you have problems with your dad. You know, you don't have problems with women, you have problems with your ex-girlfriend. That's what it is, every fucking time.
Their opinions are a product of their own anecdotal evidence.
And then on
as
the
an individual.
internet,
they meet 100,000 other people who think the same thing, and they're like, oh, it's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really. I couldn't have said it better myself. Now, a regular viewer of Manifestelle might say, but she says hashtag not all men.
With that being said, I know that there are plenty of good men out there, plenty of emotionally intelligent, emotionally stable men. My reality is populated by good men. And obviously, there's a lot of good fathers out there. I know a lot. I'm surrounded by them.
Wow, great. Congrats. Where exactly are these men? You spend all of this time demonizing men or men asterisk, but you basically never show examples of men doing good things. You never discuss good points or good criticisms they have, and you never show any compassion or any empathy for men who are going through difficult times. Not only that, but immediately after the comment about good fathers, she says something demeaning about men, and then says, if you question me, then you must be a violent piece of shit.
But whenever we talk about these things, that's why I say men asterisk. Okay, the asterisk means malicious below bare minimum effort men. And if you feel hit by that, if you're like a hit dog hollering about, oh, not all men, why do you empathize with that? Why do you empathize with the malicious below bare minimum effort men? Not all men. Okay, why do you feel hit? Does this apply? Does the shoe fit? Annoying.
Are you really going to say that? You made a whole video about how you were offended because of a comment someone made, generalizing a group of women.
On today's episode, we are talking about what happened on a certain podcast. One of the podcasters, Esther, out of the blue, literally unprovoked, made this claim.
You guys, okay, I'm gonna say something kind of wild, but it's because I saw it somewhere. Someone said that the reason why some girls are tighter than others is because... Huh? No. It has nothing to do with that. They said that it's because, like, ethnicity-wise, like black men have, are known to have larger, so therefore the women have
that makes sense.
Bigger holes.
Now, if your jaw was on the floor, join the club. Obviously, what Esther said is absolutely despicable, absolutely atrocious. Like, I need more synonyms to convey how terrible it was.
Should I assume that you sleep around a lot because you were offended by that comment? Why are you so triggered? Does the shoe fit? Are you a bad woman? Now, obviously, that would be a stupid assumption because it's okay to be upset when someone negatively generalizes a group that you belong to. If someone says, women bad, it does not make you a bad woman to be mad about that generalization. People's outrage isn't always a projection. So I agree that Esther's comment about female anatomy was stupid, but the most astronomically ironic thing about Manifestelle being upset about all this is that Manifestelle almost constantly compares men to rapists, murderers, child abusers, and psychopaths, and she's offended by a little anatomy comment that was in poor taste? So I don't really care if you say, hashtag not all men. You're still going to radicalize your audience because they've never experienced good examples of men through your content, particularly if you say on a regular basis that anyone who criticizes your extreme beliefs is acting in bad faith or is being a no-nuance Nelly. It would be like if a person had a social media account where he shows crime footage, but he only shows black people committing the worst and most disgusting crimes. Is he suddenly exonerated of spreading racial hatred if he writes hashtag not all black people on every post? Because that's essentially what Manifestelle does. It's like her little sexism get out of jail free card. You don't believe the way she's speaking is a problem? Well, this is how race relations were in the 1990s before BLM.
What do you think of white people?
White people, they straight, They just like me,
Okay.
They straight, they just stay white and we black,
To me, nothing wrong with white people. I love them just like I love the black. Ain't nothing wrong with the people by their color.
Human, just like me. I'm black, just with a different color skin, that's about it.
Right. But you find there's a difference in the way you're treated by white people as opposed to black people?
Well, they haven't treated me wrong in no kind of way.
Never?
Never. I ain't never had no static with no white person.
This is how society was when I was growing up. I remember this. Nobody had a problem with each other until like 2014. And now, this next clip is what race relations are like after a bunch of Marxists spread anti-white propaganda, not unlike what Manifestelle says about men.
So all the white people here, y'all got work to do. Stay the fuck out of black people business. Go in your neighborhood and do the anti-blackness work in there. I don't need your opinion. I don't need no Marxist bullshit. Okay. I can read black Marxism on my own.
I mean, it's so bad that I've watched over 30 of her videos, actually probably closer to 40 at the time of recording, and I was only able to find a single example of her saying positive things about men, and it was basically just men who are on her ideological team, following a TikTok trend that she likes. So, congrats. Real tough one there to praise someone who already agrees with you. She also praised this guy here from a comment, but she only agrees with him because he was crapping on men, which still makes her a sexist, so I don't count that. And she praised this guy who spent a bunch of money on a chick, but she deleted that video for some reason, so I'm not going to count that. She actually deletes a lot of her content. In fact, a couple of days after I began doing research on her, she deleted over a third of her videos, going from 75 videos to 48. Now, I can understand if you had a bad take that you no longer agree with, or you got an important piece of information wrong and you want to memory hole that. What creator hasn't done this? But to delete over 3 million views or a third of her channel in one day is kind of extreme. Why did she do that? Well, apparently she does it frequently, according to Tree of Logic, who's watched her longer than I have.
Hold on. Let's see. Which one was it? She is known for deleting videos. She did a video on that black woman and got that wrong, and she deleted that video. But there was a video she did before this one, and it was so bad. I was like, girl, come on. Come on, girl. Do some research. Yeah, she took that video down. She took that video down.
Fortunately, I've been doing this for a while, so I save everything I take notes on. Otherwise, this would have been a much less interesting video. But the point is that saying hashtag not all men is not good enough if you don't regularly humanize them to give the audience an experience with men doing things correctly. In fact, she actively argues against talking about what a good man is.
Here's the thing too. I get asked this a lot. Well, what should we look for in a man? Like, give me a bullet point, a list, like, check, check, check. Like, number one, we are not giving men a step-by-step of how they can pretend to be the person that we like. Don't give them a layout of what you want, okay? Just observe what they do for you. And if you want them to do more of something, reward it positively.
What a great civil servant. I want men to act a certain way, but I won't tell them what I want. They just have to guess and hope they get it right so I can positively reinforce it, and if they don't get it right, I'm going to be quietly fuming at them for something I never communicated that I wanted. You must be excellent at conflict resolution in a relationship.
You guys are so entitled that even the idea of asking is offensive to you. And then when you don't ask and you don't get what you didn't ask for, then you complain about it on a podcast. It's crazy.
They don't talk.
Bitch, use your words.
They don't talk.
Use your fucking words.
They don't talk, but they want a man that communicates. That's wild to me.
Now, a part of the Manifestelle brand is that she's the spoiled girly who goes into the research. I mean, not that she actually does that, but it's how her viewers see her. And she has a real degree, sort of, because she graduated in, like, biology or something. So she puts a lot of research on screen to make it look like she's well-read, but allow me to caution you, because that is often a red herring, as I have found while making videos, that an uncomfortable amount of people do not actually read the research that they use for their videos, including multiple doctors. So what I see with Elle is a very lazy demeanor when it comes to research, while trying to maintain the reputation of someone who is a good fact-checker. It's not just the critical thinking fail or the failure to clarify with the study that she used to make her point about hypergamy, or the fact that she talks about homicide in multiple videos without showing the actual statistics. But Elle also very frequently cites secondary sources, which are like magazine articles about a study, instead of the original source material. This is a problem, particularly when complex things are being studied, instead of simple demographics. This often causes her to make stupid claims like this.
I am so passionate about this because of the effects of all this invisible labor on women, and especially women's health. Studies have found that an imbalance in household labor is associated with poor health, and domestic work has been linked to pain in the neck, back, and shoulders, and even cardiovascular disease.
You've got to be kidding me. Housework causes heart disease? Where does that claim come from? Because I didn't see it in anything she sourced. That article was about chronic injury, and if we're going to have a pissing contest about that, then may I point out that over 90% of workplace deaths are men. You think men don't get injured doing their jobs too? Anyway, even though she will sometimes go, air quote, deeper into the data, though she seems to frequently just quote the summary of the study, but when she does go deeper, she often uses those results to fearmonger the audience into thinking that traditional men want to kill their wives.
What are family annihilators? It would seem to have been Dietz, 1986, who first coined the term family annihilator. He described the family annihilator as usually the senior man of the house who is depressed, paranoid, intoxicated, or a combination of these, and noted that he may commit suicide after unaliving the others or may force the police to unalive him. It is also clear that family annihilation, as well as spree or serial murder, is an overwhelmingly male preserve.
So I looked up the actual statistics for murder by an intimate partner, and this study from 2021 said that 4,970 women were homicide victims versus 17,970 males. 34% of women were victimized by an intimate partner, which comes out to 1,690. For comparison, according to this graph, in that same year, 12,135 women were killed in car accidents, which means you are roughly 7 times more likely to die from a car crash than you are by an intimate partner. Manifestelle majored in a STEM field, right? So I'm sure that she understands math. So why doesn't she mention how dangerous it is to be around cars? We're trying to protect women, right? Also note that considering that men are over 3 times more likely to be victims of murder than women, it's probably best to categorize these by total number of victims and not by percentage if you want an accurate picture of this problem. So if you do these categories by the total number of victims, it turns out that the actual number of people who were victimized by intimate partners is 1,690 women versus 1,078 men. So, hey Manifestelle, women abusing and killing their male partners is not that infrequent. The numbers are actually way closer than the title of this article suggests. But what a shock. Yet another example of women most affected in a situation where most of the victims are men. Not to mention that the silver lining of women knowing their assailant more often than men is that you can more effectively reduce this problem by learning human psychology and by learning how to identify predators so that you can stay away from them. Yet instead of empowering her viewers with information like this, Manifestelle often fearmongers her audience into believing that murder is something that's likely to happen to them if they don't heed her warnings. She does that by saying, "You can never tell what kind of men these are. There are no signs, it's just random."
And the problem with previous pre-2014 perception of the family annihilators was that family annihilators were painted as like these obviously unhappy and frustrated men, like men whose turmoil is so visible that we think that we would know if they were going to do it. But apparently, that's not representative of reality. You can never really can tell.
Actually, there's a great book that teaches you how to identify risk factors for extreme abusers called The Murderer Next Door. But do you know what the dumbest thing was? Elle's evidence of, "This is just random, you can never tell who it's going to be," comes from a text that says, "These men had good jobs and made a lot of money. They would never do anything abusive." Are you kidding me? Yeah, like a rich person has never done something evil before. If you ever needed any proof that graduating college doesn't make you smart or give you critical thinking skills, here it is. The text also stated, "Oh, but publicly he seemed like a good husband." Do you have any idea how many people lie about the health of their relationships in public? Behind the scenes, there were probably a number of signs he was abusive before he committed the crime. These things don't just happen in a vacuum. You can learn the signs. Elle, have you ever thought about doing any research on mental health? I mean, how does this video actually help your audience? Telling them that men are a bunch of killers and there's not much they can do to protect themselves. But in reality, there's a lot you can do to protect yourself from abusive people. First and foremost, understand that abusive people, male or female, tend to be very good at identifying who will be an easy target. The best thing that you can do is not be a good victim. One of the most common ways that abusive people know that you're weak is through your posture. Not only does standing up straight make you more physically attractive, it also signals that you're not weak. Bad posture is one of the ways that bullies know which kid to pick on at school. They also look for people with very soft or weak voices, or people who aren't very assertive. Outside of that, there are certain common red flags that abusers have in a relationship, like they call you stupid or worthless a lot, or they think of excuses to isolate you from your friends and family, or they increasingly try to restrict your freedom against your will. So if they do those things, then don't marry or have kids with them. Maybe if Elle did some actual research on this stuff, she could give her audience some decent advice. But wait, if she did actual research, she couldn't fearmonger her audience about the frequency of murder, and that's bad for views.
Late last year, this TikTok video went viral, and it reads, "White men because they no longer want to be a married father of 4, but divorce is never an option." And she first points to the phone at her head and then points it at other people, basically as a joke to say that these men would threaten to do bad things to themselves, but really they do bad things to the people around them, aka their family. And no, I cannot play the video, but check it out if you want, okay? And this video was so viral because, it's a thing.
Sorry if this seems like a random tangent, but I caught it during editing and I couldn't leave it out. So you mean to tell me that this chick flipped out and went on a 22-minute rant about how disgusting a comment was that a girl made about black people, but if a black person makes a joke calling white men a bunch of mass shooters who will harm their own families, that's something that your audience just has to watch? I'm so tired of these fucking racists virtue signaling to everyone. Either all of this stuff is okay, or none of it's okay. These people will say the most racist shit, and then when someone makes half a joke back at them, they'll spend like 10 hours crying about it. Anyway, sorry for the tangent. Let's finish the fear-mongering clip.
But it's a lot more common than once in a blue moon. And honestly, the girlies are already starting to talk about it. Someone said,
"It's like a universal agreement that this is how they will handle it. Even when they simply lose a job, this is their reaction."
And one of the main reasons I wanted to talk about this today is because it does need to be studied. Okay, we are in the midst of the so-called male loneliness crisis, aka men's F around and find out era.
Actually, look at the murder rates, Elle. All cases of murder are like 5.5 people per 100,000, and spousal homicides are way less than that. This is a very rare occurrence, and you've shown no evidence that murder is an increasing problem over the past 10, 20, or 30 years. It's been going down. Even after it spiked during COVID, it's still going down. I mean, you brag about being a STEM major, but did you forget everything from your stats class? Because your negligence on the research here is stunning. I am genuinely shocked that you can read an entire book and watch like 100 episodes of Criminal Minds, but you can't spend 5 seconds Googling a very obvious question like, what are the homicide rates in America? I'm not even being hyperbolic about how insane the fear-mongering is, as Manifestelle literally suggests that becoming a trad wife will get you killed.
So today's class is to shed a light on this very disturbing phenomenon and how the trends that are rising right now, such as the increased proliferation of trad wife content and the adoption of trad wife lifestyle, predicts the rise of family annihilators.
What exactly is your evidence of this? Do you even have like a correlative graph of trad wife relationships going up, followed by an increasing murder rate? No, because the murder rates are going down. So where do we get this correlation of TikTok influencers promoting traditionalism, leading to increased homicide?
And if you think I'm overblowing this issue, you want to gaslight me about how this is not a real problem, listen to this.
If you're in the true crime community, you would know how scary accurate this is. It needs to be studied truly.
It's a thing, it's a big thing, it's a known thing, and it's a thing that should be studied so that we could prevent it. And it is so big that Criminal Minds, the TV series, did multiple episodes on this topic, showing all the different iterations of family annihilators. They did at least one episode on family annihilators in season 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13.
Oh yeah? You don't think this is a problem? Well, there was a TV show that did a lot of episodes on it. I bet you can't argue against that. You can't be serious, Elle. Where is your education? Now, I haven't shown this, but she uses the term media literacy a lot. So Elle, if you're media literate, then where is your understanding that seeing something on TV a lot doesn't mean it's genuinely a frequent occurrence? I mean, when I was a kid, I thought I had a high chance of dying in quicksand because every movie had quicksand in it. Yet in all my life, I've never encountered quicksand before. Again, you've got to be kidding me. How does this media literate spoiled girly not know that over-reporting bad things is a very common news tactic to make people think that those things happen more frequently than they actually do? Anyway, next she says this.
Did you know that women are the main consumers of true crime? Which is funny. I mean, not funny, but interesting, because we are also the main victims of violent crime.
Actually, men are more often the victims of violent crime, and when it comes to murder, most of the victims are men. Again, these are simple numbers that take seconds to look up. Seriously, Elle, you should sue the college that you went to for not teaching you research methodology. But maybe I shouldn't be this generous because honestly, her research is so bad that mixed with everything else, it's hard to not attribute it to open malice towards men.
Not only are we living in a crisis of masculinity and male loneliness, we are also living in an uncertain economy where industries are facing great disruption by new technology. What happens when these men who have all this responsibility face job loss, business failure, loss of money, loss of status, and loss of face? What happens when we create a society filled with the perfect conditions for a family annihilator? You get the rise of family annihilators. When they can no longer perform masculinity by being the breadwinner, the decision maker, the big boss, they resort to crime as a last resort performance of masculinity so that they can feel good about themselves. Crime by men is a form of social practice invoked as a resource when other resources are unavailable for accomplishing masculinity. And apparently, men are socialized to accomplish masculinity by hurting women and children.
Yeah, after that comment, I see no reason to give you any charitability. With no evidence other than someone else's opinion in a book that you read and a Google Trends search, you said that men are socialized to kill women and children. Not only that, but she also says, if you thought the problem wasn't bad enough, lots of men are going to lose their jobs in the future, and because of that, this creates the perfect conditions for men to start murdering their families left and right. You do understand how the audience is going to perceive this, right? Because you basically never show good examples of men, because you don't go over the actual numbers even though they're easy to look up, and because you many times say that this problem is getting worse despite the evidence contradicting you, your audience is going to leave with the emotional judgment that all men, or almost all men, are bad. This is exactly what the Manosphere does. They fill their shows up with prostitutes or the most delusional women they can find, and they say, look, this is how most women or all women behave. Anyway, like I was saying, it's disgusting how little research someone can get away with and have people believe them if they just pull a random number out of their ass or put a quote from a book on screen. Elle said that men commit crime as a way of accomplishing masculinity when other resources are unavailable, and basically use that to suggest that if a traditional man gets laid off, he will kill his wife and his family. Did she directly say that? No, she didn't directly say it, but this is how you will perceive the message emotionally as a viewer, because she's not regularly showing positive examples to counteract the negative ones. Where did she even get that info? Well, she quoted it from a 2012 article from the International Journal of Law, Crime, and Justice. That sounds really official, right? However, if you go to the paper and you find the quote, it doesn't come from that article. It comes from this 30-year-old book on page 85, and when you read it, you find out that it's just someone's opinion. Someone's opinion who spent 2 whole pages quoting other people's opinions. Like, he didn't even do a study on it, he just read some books and said, this is what I think. Yet Manifestelle presents this information as if it was a fact that came from a study that was testing for this. That being said, to my regular viewers, do you remember when I did the Alienation video and I talked about people, especially Marxist and radical leftists like Robin DiAngelo, just quoting their friends and printing it as scientific fact? Well, here's yet another example of that. So did Manifestelle read the source of this quote to evaluate the validity of the claim before she essentially stated it as fact for her video? No. She probably didn't even know that it came from a 30-year-old book because she quoted the journal article that used it instead of citing the actual book. So here's a little lesson in research methodology. When you read like a systemic review or a book or a study that quotes another study, then you need to read the source material of the thing that you're quoting to evaluate the claim before you say shit like this.
And what do all the other men do about it? Okay, almost nothing. Because evil men make mediocre men look good. That's why. Femicide is off the charts, and they want us to repopulate the earth. So what? So evil men can depopulate it? Okay, they want us to bring life into a world that celebrates psychopathic men?
Right. Nobody has done anything about the homicide rates that are falling, by the way, and this world celebrates psychopathic men. Again, this is not like an uncommon point from her. She gives this sentiment of violence from men and blows it way out of proportion in a lot of her videos. And when it comes to everything else, she gives the most unfair, one-sided assessment that she can give, and basically never criticizes women for things that they also do.
Why do we have to be good at everything? And why are the men good at nothing? Like, tell me why are women picking men who are good at nothing? Tell me why weaponized incompetence or incompetence period is still not an ick, okay? Like, if a man doesn't have basic adult survival skills, like, that is a child. Like, you're really telling me you can't cook pasta? You can't microwave a meal?
Yes, as if no woman on earth has ever weaponized incompetence to get out of work. Yet she only points out men doing it. And don't worry, I have more. She throws out a lot of these one-sided arguments.
Whenever women express their desire for material manifestations of a man's love, a nice ring, a nice date, a nice house, a nice whatever, we get told,
who do you think you are? You don't deserve that.
Yet no one bats an eye when a man says,
I want a nice wife, I want a nice looking wife, I want a nice home, I want all the nice products of a woman's labor.
No one tells them, who do you think you are? You don't deserve that. No one tells these men, who do you think you are to want a wife when you're not husband material? When you're broke and unable or unwilling to provide? You don't deserve that, okay? No one tells these men that they don't deserve women when they're not good partners to begin with.
What are you talking about? Women make fun of incels all the time. In fact, it's a very common insult to aim at men when they express standards for the kinds of women that they want. Has she ever ventured out of the nest before, or is she just in that echo chamber 24/7? She's also kind of leaving out the part where when these women request a material manifestation of a man's love, she means like a $5 million home, a $40,000 engagement ring, and 10 expensive luxury vacations a year. That's why people are making fun of you. You're promoting the idea that men should only have access to a relationship if they're in like the top 1 to 5% of earners, and I don't think statements like that are going to hurt men nearly as much as it's going to make a ton of women single who would have otherwise been in happy marriages. All of the normal men are just going to laugh at you for saying something ridiculous and move on to someone who isn't so far removed from reality. Okay, one more.
So we're not doing that anymore. Because like I said, a lot of the feminine, divine, receiving energy era men, they love studying women.
What do women want? Let me pretend to be this person up until I have trapped her.
Okay, so we're not doing that anymore. Don't give them a layout of what you want.
Women do this shit too. It's called being a pick-me. You use that word all the time. Are you really this biased? Have you ever once thought from the perspective of a man? No woman has ever misrepresented herself before in a relationship. Only men do that. The bias here is insane.
She doesn't care. She is so focused on men bad. This is like the second or third video that she done that involves men where she does not call out the women. Don't listen to women who are that tribal and biased. Don't do this. They hate men so much that they will not hold women accountable. You don't want to deal with these type of women. They are just as bad as the red pillars.
She cries about men having no empathy for women, and I have a hard time believing that she's not just self-reporting here, because she clearly has zero empathy for men. Like, this is some strong projection. But going back to the weaponized incompetence thing, well, not really, but we're going to talk about a video she did about weaponized incompetence. So sort of going back to that topic, this was probably the worst video of hers that I watched in terms of relationship advice, as I watched her brag about poisoning a girl who had a good time on a date.
Since we're already on the topic, let's talk about how to make the world a better place. You need to stop being impressed with the bare minimum. And you need to teach the spoiled girlies around you to not be impressed by the bare minimum. Let me tell you a story. I have a girlfriend and she's a little younger than me, and this happened a long time ago. And she tells me about this date that she went on, and she was talking about how the guy paid and that was really nice. And I literally turned to her and I was like, wow, the bare minimum. He paid for the date. What else? And she was literally fangirling over this fact. And I get it because she was younger and it was like, you know, her first few dates, you know, kind of dating. And I'm like, we need to reset the wiring here, okay? That's the bare minimum. Like, you shouldn't be fangirling over that, okay? Wow, the bare minimum.
This chick is so hard to agree with because while I wouldn't be caught dead having a woman pay for a date, she is so condescending when she says this stuff that it makes me want to do the polar opposite. On top of that, we have yet again her arguing to be in an echo chamber.
Like, you're not even a spoiled girly. Like, why are you the spoiled girly comments? Okay, like, make it make sense.
Good. Keep thinking like that. Continuing to have bad takes because you don't ever talk to people who disagree with you is great for content. Keep being that low-hanging fruit for other creators. Keep making the mistake of not listening to your enemies.
You should love your enemy. So you might say, well, why should you do that? Well, your enemy is going to be your harshest critic. Now, it's possible that if you have a very good enemy, that he will show you flaws in your character that you didn't know were there. The more vicious the attack, the more of your potential hidden flaws might be revealed.
Have you found that to be true?
Oh, definitely.
Yep, your enemies don't give a shit about your feelings, so they will always be the people who tell you exactly what's wrong with you and exactly how to improve yourself. But instead of listening to the opposition, Elle is busy congratulating herself for making a friend miserable who was previously happy.
So when I told her that, like, wow, the bare minimum, she was like, oh my God, you're so right. So now whenever we would hear stories about men doing the bare minimum, we're like, wow, the bare minimum. Like, wow, the bare minimum. Like, okay, give me more. So this is a cheat code for all the girlies who have not received positive behavior, positive treatment from men thus far, okay? This will really help. Just in your head, say, wow, the bare minimum. And it will help you be so unimpressed and so unbothered. Like, wow, the bare minimum.
That's impressive. This chick really knows how to cause a divorce. Do you know what the great thing about this line of thinking is? If you spend most of your time practicing being ungrateful for everyday things, then even when he does go above and beyond, you aren't going to appreciate that either. Gratitude comes from paying attention to and finding appreciation for the little things. If you only find satisfaction from expensive items or extreme experiences, then you're going to be miserable most of the time. Now, of course, if a guy plays video games all day and doesn't contribute to the relationship, don't date that guy. If a guy is physically abusive, obviously get away from him. But if a guy is doing things right, then don't demean his good actions by saying, that's just the bare minimum.
And like I said, it's not to be ungrateful, it's not to be a bitch, it's not to be that.
Gee, you could have fooled me, because you play the part really well.
It's for your own protection. Because even when a man's doing the bare minimum, you say thank you, you smile, you make them feel good about it. Like you positively reinforce the behavior, which helps them want to do it more.
Right. Be dishonest about your actual feelings and use manipulative language to get him to do what you want. That'll foster a good relationship. I mean, as a master of empathy, as the most empathetic person on the planet, has Manifestelle ever thought, what if a guy said this to me? L, what if a guy was with you and said, she cooked for me? Bare minimum. That sourdough bread is burnt anyway. She took the kids out to the park so I could relax by myself for a bit? Bare minimum. Of course she should be doing that. Women are supposed to take care of the kids. She spent the whole day making the house spotless? Not a big deal. The house better be spotless or I'm divorcing her because women who clean are the bare minimum. No other women exist. Do you not see how awful and almost downright abusive that way of thinking sounds? Well, to be perfectly honest, I doubt she's ever gotten a provider man. Unlike some of her gold-digging peers who look much better on camera, she never wears any designer items or expensive jewelry. I mean, it looks like she gets most of her clothes at Target or Walmart, so there's no evidence that provider men are spoiling her. But really, there's no way a guy is pairing up with a woman this foul, unless he's desperate, especially if he's seen her videos, so it makes sense that she alludes to being single a lot.
I'm so glad that women are speaking up about how there's a third option. You don't have to pick between a bad man and another bad man. You can choose a good woman yourself.
I could have sworn that someone had a very different way of framing that.
Buy a dog and die alone.
Last little bit on this point, I also noticed that Elle never actually talks about where to find a provider man, which is strange because her peers like Shira have incredibly specific advice on that subject. But after 30 to 40 videos, all I've seen Elle do is shit on men and tell women to raise their standards. She never gives advice on how to find a good guy, probably because she doesn't know. On top of that, I saw a video where she said that women get uglier or glow down when they're in a relationship with a bad man. You can read the subtitles on screen for the evidence. Well, recently, I've noticed that she's been getting less attractive, so if she's in a relationship right now, what does that say about her ability to get with a good man who is in his divine masculine energy? And if you think it's mean for me to point that out, then let me just say that after 30 to 40 videos of misandry, I don't care. More importantly, how does all of this help her followers? Almost all of her content is saying men bad while providing no answers on how to find the good ones. All this is going to do is make her audience hate men and be unable to find a partner who they like, which is just going to demoralize them. And honestly, this ties really well into the whole woke thing, because the entire woke radical leftist narrative is obviously designed to demoralize and depress people by constantly talking about problems but never talking about effective solutions. So like I said earlier, what did you change, Elle? I mean, where's the light at the end of the tunnel here? If you actually had empathy for your viewers, you wouldn't sit there and blackpill them like that. How does anyone think that Elle understands what empathy is after saying stuff like this?
My standards for men are so high because my standards for myself are so high. If I can treat others well and be mindful of their emotions, be mindful of their workload, it is not a big ask to want a partner who has that same mindfulness. Like, is it so bad to ask for someone who is my equal?
Yes, you show mindfulness for men's workload by calling it bare minimum. Now, it's been a while since I've said this, but anytime someone publicly gasses themselves up about how great they are, it's an immediate red flag. People who are good don't have to virtue signal about how good they are because others will say it for them. If someone has to constantly say that they're empathetic, then they aren't empathetic. And if they have the strong need to publicly praise themselves for being good, then they're probably a narcissist. Allow me to show you just how empathetic L is.
There was that Reddit thread about how men don't want women who, not that we care about what they want, it's just a thing, okay?
A stunning example of empathy right there. You showed those below bare minimum effort men how to properly care about another person. Sarcasm aside, why in the hell would you expect a man to be empathetic towards you when this is how you speak about men? I mean, you had to pause what you were saying to make sure that you told your audience that you don't care about men. Ultimately, the problem with this type of content is that it's terrible advice for the long term, especially when you talk about marriage, which is what these people are looking for. They're looking for a successful marriage. And here's the thing, this idealistic portrayal of how a successful relationship should be from people like Fresh and Fit or Manifestelle, where everything just goes your way and your partner is perfect all the time or you'll break up with them, is a very toxic way to view a relationship. Personally, I don't think I've known anyone who's been married for a long time who hasn't gone through a rough period or hasn't gone through at least one divorce-worthy argument. Marriages are difficult, especially when kids are involved, and what I've never heard any of these channels do is talk about how to resolve conflict or give people reasons to stay, which is weird because when you talk to real people who have been together for like 10 plus years, how to deal with arguments is like one of the first pieces of advice they give. Because in a relationship, you're going to disagree on a lot of things, so if you actually want things to go well, then this whole my way or the highway mentality is going to result in a breakup or a divorce. And the even bigger problem with this, society-wide, is that people in general, especially people who use the internet a lot, have been moving away from compromise, are moving away from understanding the ideas from other people's perspectives, and are moving away from forgiveness. Both the Manosphere and the gold digger spaces are so focused on blaming everyone else and are so lacking in empathy that they can't see stuff like this. So here's a lesson in empathy for people who struggle with it, like our spoiled girly. If something goes wrong, ask yourself, how are my actions contributing to the problem? And if I was the other person, how would I see this situation? What would I think the root of the problem is? If you start asking yourself those questions, all of your relationships will get better. Anyway, thanks for watching, follow me on Twitter, and I'll see you in the next video.